Hello, my name is Kelly Waymont, and we are here in the Siluet Studios to do a craft-along class for embossing with the Curio2. I think you'll really like this project, and you can add any comments or questions you have in the comments section below. But first, let's go ahead and talk about the supplies that you'll need. This is a simple project today, just some basic embossing, and so we're mostly using paper. But you will use a Curio2, and you're going to use the electrostatic bed that is included with the machine. We are also going to use the embossing mat, the 12 by 12 inch embossing mat, and that is a separate purchase. We'll use an embossing tool. We're going to go ahead and use the fine embossing tool that comes in a 2-pack, but you can just look at the bottom side to see which one's fine and which one's wide. And then we will also use the auto blade. We will use some vellum, and you can use full sheets of vellum and cut them out, or you can just trim your vellum to 3.75 inches by 5 inches. We're going to use a dark piece of cardstock, and this is just letter size cardstock. We're going to use a half sheet that is just a full sheet cut in half, and we're going to fold that in half for the card base. And then I'm using a pattern paper, but you could also use another dark cardstock. What we want is something that's not very busy, but is kind of on the darker side, so when we have a vellum in front of it, it's going to show through and make that design that we emboss kind of pop. So not too busy, and the darker the better. And that's all we need as far as supplies to make this project. So here we are in the Siluet Studio software, and we're going to start as usual with the page setup panel. We want to make sure that the machine selected is the Curio2. We want the cutting mat right now to be the protector sheet only. And then the media size, you can start at 12 by 12, and we can adjust that as we get into the design. And I want you to make sure that you always have this show cut border box checked. So we can cut the vellum piece with the machine, but I've actually already trimmed these down to 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. We're going to prepare our pattern paper, and we're going to cut, it's a thin pattern paper, and we're just going to cut it directly on the ES bed by positioning one copy. Let me get my design open. All right, so this design will be provided for you. Let me copy and paste these. Or you'll be able to buy this design in the design store. And we will add the design number in the description of this class. So first we're going to choose this notched card insert. This is the piece that is going to be behind the vellum. Vellum is really nice for showing off embossing, but the tricky part is getting it to look nice without glue showing behind when you attach it to a card. So this has little notches in the corners that vellum piece is going to be able to just stick those corners behind there to hold it in place. So you can make more copies if you want. I'm just going to cut one today. So we'll put it on the cutting area, and we'll set the media size to match our actual paper. And I'm using, let's see, my page is 12 inches by about 9 inches wide. So I'll go ahead and show you how to put your paper onto the ES bed. All right, so I've got the ES bed here, and I've got the protector sheet. Make sure when you're cutting directly on the ES bed that you've got your protector sheet in place, and you can turn that on, the charge on before or after you put your paper on. I usually like to put my paper on first because I can position it better without the mat, just grabbing it instantly. I'm going to line up that left edge, and then I do leave a little bit of a gap on the top. There's a little notch on the top of the Curio there on the base that kind of shows you that top edge to line that up with. And I'm going to put my auto blade in the left side, carriage 1, and I'm going to put my embossing tool in the right side, carriage 2. And now I will go ahead and turn that on, and that little button just lights up to let you know that it's starting to charge. And then we'll just give it a couple minutes to make sure that's fully charged and holding on to the protector sheet and our paper. With that charged up, that's not moving, and so we can go back into the software. All right, so we'll go to the Send tab, and we want to make sure that we're using carriage 1 for the auto blade, and so we want our lines to be red. We're going to set the material to something, anything, it can be paper, we're going to adjust it a little bit. So the closest thing is copy paper medium, and then I want my blade at 2, and 15 to 18 is usually pretty good. And since this is a very simple shape, we can lead the speed at 10. Okay, so when that's all set and it shows that our machine is connected and ready. So when I click Send, that's going to pop up with a little reminder, confirm and send panel, reminding us to load our paper onto the ES bed. And we've got our auto blade. And for this situation, I'm going to go ahead and leave my auto material thickness enabled, and that, since it's not glossy, it's not see-through, it'll be able to register that height perfectly. So once that setting for carriage 1 is right, we'll click Send, and it just reminds us to put our paper onto the ES bed, load an auto blade, and we have auto material thickness detection enabled, which we do want to use because it's a solid color, it's not shiny, it's going to be fine to detect the height. So I'll click Send, and it does a little automatic height detection first, and then it's going to use the tool 1 to cut that design that we have set up. All right, so we can turn off the electrostatic charge now, and then pull this piece up. So that has cut our background piece for attaching the vellum. You can see it's got those little notches there. We'll set that aside, and next we're going to set this up for the embossing mat. So you can put your embossing mat directly on to the ES bed, but when you do that, you take off the protective cover. We don't need that extra barrier there, and the mat itself will do the protecting at this point. So we will get our mat in place, and there's just little corners here. There's little marks on the corner of the mat, and those match up, so you're lining them up with those same little notches at all 4 corners of the Curio bed. So when you have those all lined up, and you can see there's just a little bit of a border on all of these sides of the bed below it, that's how you know it's in the right place. And we will go ahead and turn on the power to charge up the ES bed, and that is going to hold the embossing mat in place. That gives enough strength that it will hold it in place. And same thing, just give it a minute or two to charge that up and have it hold firmly in place. And I can go ahead and get that cover off of there right now. so it's ready when we're ready to put our paper on there. So for now, while that charges, we'll go back into the software. We will go back to the Design tab, and we're going to borrow a hummingbird shape from another design. So I'll go back to my library, and I can just type hummingbird and find that card. Here it is, a hummingbird card, number 437774. So I'll just double click to open. And this card is a little bit, it's a compound path. So we're going to do a little bit of Siluet Studio magic. And to make those lines show up better, I'm going to set the line size to 0.0 inches. And that should make it a little easier to see. Let's also set our page setup for the new mat that we're using. So machine stays at Curio2. The cutting mat, instead of the protector sheet, we're going to say we want to use the Curio2 emboss mat. And you can see that changes visually so it matches what you see with your physical mat. You see it on the screen. And our media size, we are using a piece of vellum that I've already cut, and it is 5 inches wide and 3.75 inches high. So you can see that's kind of a landscape orientation. That'll help the hummingbird fit, and that'll match our card. And now let's go get what we need from this hummingbird design. Okay, so it is grouped right now, so we're going to ungroup it. And we're going to move away the pieces we don't need. So we don't need that little background piece, we'll delete it. But this is actually a compound path, and I won't go into all the details right here, but basically we need to get this that is holes in this card. It won't ungroup. So we need to retrieve it by releasing the compound path. So I'm going to right click and choose Release Compound Path, and now all of a sudden those are individual pieces of their own. So I'm going to move away and delete these old pieces of the card we don't need, and then I will select all those hummingbird pieces and group them. So now we have exactly what we need for our own card. And we do need to resize it a little bit so it will fit. So at about 3.15 inches high is good. So I'm going to leave that locked up here in the aspect ratio and type in 3.15 inches high. And then I can just choose center from the, or center to page from the quick access toolbar. And that is all set. I will point out here that we are embossing, and so our end result, we're going to use the raised image for our card. And so if you want this to be facing a different, or the direction that you want to see it, you're going to mirror horizontally. So anything like text or something that matters, whether it's mirrored or not, you would mirror this right now. And that you can just do a right click and flip horizontally. I'm just going to leave it the way it is because my hummingbird looks good either way. All right, so we'll go to the Send tab, and this time we're going to be using Carriage 2. We're going to be using the embossing tool. So we can actually collapse Carriage 1, get that out of the way, and we will select the hummingbird and choose Emboss and under Carriage 2. And then the material, we can use vellum, and we'll have to make some adjustment here. So right now it doesn't think it has any emboss action, so I'll show you really quick how to set that up. So I'll just click the More button, and we want to edit settings for Curio2. And then we want to select Carriage 2 and click this little plus button here to add an emboss action. And then the force we want is about 16, and the speed can be 10. And then everything else we can leave as is. So once we've got that for carriage 2 set to emboss, we can click Save. And then we'll exit out of that. And if it doesn't save your settings that first time, just type it in again. Force 16, speed 10, everything else the same, and click Save. And you won't always have to do that. It will remember it once you've got it set up, but every once in a while it forgets. Okay, so we have our design set up. It's blue line, so we know it's going to use carriage 2. And that is all ready to emboss. So we'll go ahead and stick our vellum on the page, and we'll be ready to send that. All right, so we've already removed the sticky liner, and when you get your embossing mat, it will have these little clear tabs in there. What those do is they help to stick your media to your mat better. So they like to cling to the mat better than your vellum or other things like score and emboss paper, so they're really handy. And when you're placing your media on your mat, you're just going to line up with the sticky edge, the top and the left edges onto the sticky area of the mat. And then give it a good press. You can press those little plastic tabs so they'll hold that media in place. And that's not moving, that charge is good. And so we can just go back into the send panel. We'll click send, and again it reminds us put the vellum and the embossing tool in carriage 2, and we will go ahead and keep the automatic thickness material detection enabled. So we'll click send, and that will register the height and then emboss for us. So that is done. You can feel that impression that that's made. We can turn off the power for the electrostatic charge and pull off this design. I'll try and save these little clear tabs. They really do help the material stick better. They're clear, so they're easy to lose. Just keep track of those. So this has pressed into our vellum, and you can see it a little bit better with the dark behind it. So it has pressed this design into our vellum. You can experiment with the pressure and using the wide or the fine embossing tools. That's all kind of the fun of using the Curio, is you can tweak your settings to get exactly what you want. You just don't want it to tear through. So now we'll flip this over, and we can see and feel that nice raised embossing. And then the rest of this is really easy. We've got our pieces here. This is just this half piece of cardstock, just a letter size cardstock cut in half. So then I'm going to fold it in half, give it a good crease, and then I will tuck my vellum corners in where these notches are. And then it's ready to be attached to the card front. And when I apply adhesive, I like to put a little bit where that vellum is. It kind of holds it in place a little bit better. So just some adhesive on the back and line that up for your card front. So it's got an even border all the way around. And that's it. You've got a nice, pretty embossed card to give away. And this is just something that's really fun to experiment with and choose what designs you want to try. And you can use other papers you can emboss on cardstock, but the vellum is really a fun option that helps you see that. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this to be a fun project, something simple to get you started with Curio embossing. Make sure that you ask any questions you have in the comments, and thank you for joining me today.